Every great scandal needs a villain. When GVE London collapsed, the headlines screamed for blood and social media wasted no time serving up a face. George, the sales director. He was the one sending WhatsApp updates, shaking hands with millionaires, and making promises he couldn't keep. But here's the question no one wants to ask. Are we blaming the right person, or just the one who stayed visible while the real masterminds quietly disappeared into the shadows? It's a pattern as old as business itself. When fortunes vanish, the crowd wants someone to punish. A well-known frontman caught in 100 screenshots is far easier to attack than the faceless executives who set the rules, signed the checks, and steered the ship into the storm. Within days of GVE London's collapse, George's name became synonymous with betrayal. The angry comments, the memes, the threats, he became the lightning rod for every client's rage. But as the blame rolled downhill, who was watching the ones at the top? Behind the curtain, the architects of this disaster had time to prepare. CEOs and major shareholders rarely appear in comment threads. They approve the business models, direct the flow of funds, and, when trouble brews, consult their lawyers and vanish from public view. Assets are moved, liabilities shuffled, new companies registered. George, meanwhile, faced the mob alone. We see this play out in scandals around the world. The fall guy becomes a public sacrifice, while the system that enabled the collapse, greedy expansion, poor oversight, and legal loopholes, remains unexamined. What if the real story of GVE London isn't about one man's failure, but a pattern of distraction and deflection? A magic trick where the crowd's attention is steered away from the true architects of ruin. Tonight, we start not with the most obvious suspect, but with the question. When everyone is looking at the front man, what are the masterminds doing just out of sight?
In every collapse, the true power rarely sits in the spotlight. At GVE London, the real architects operated from behind polished boardroom doors, their names mostly absent from angry posts and viral headlines. But it was their decisions that set the disaster in motion, long before any WhatsApp promise was broken on the showroom floor. Who are these masterminds? They're the CEOs, majority shareholders, and founding partners. They sign off on the risky business models, greenlight rapid expansion, and approve the use of other people's cars to build a glossy facade. They design the sale or return agreements that keep showrooms full without tying up their own capital. When business is booming, they accept the praise and the profits. When cracks appear, they move quickly, not to warn, but to protect themselves. The tactics are subtle but effective. Well before the public sees trouble, assets can be quietly shifted, valuable vehicles sold, funds transferred, new shell companies registered. Legal advisors draw up indemnity clauses and firewall documents to distance key players from direct liability. And as the collapse grows inevitable, official statements are crafted, press releases are vague, and the leaders vanish behind teams of lawyers. Meanwhile, frontline staff, sales directors like George, are left exposed. Their communications are on record, their faces known, their loyalty to the brand weaponized against them. When clients demand answers, the real decision-makers are unreachable, protected by layers of bureaucracy, legal privilege, and plausible deniability. This is not just a GVE London problem. In scandals from Wall Street to Tokyo, it's the same choreography. The ones who benefit most in good times are experts at disappearing when the music stops. The crowd's attention is guided towards someone they know, someone easy to blame. The deeper you look, the more you see that the game is rigged for distraction. The question is not who is easiest to blame, but who had the power to prevent the disaster and what they did to escape responsibility when the time came.
When a business goes down in flames, the crowd's fury needs a target. Psychologists call it scapegoating, the primal urge to find one person to blame, even when the real cause is tangled, hidden, or collective. In the age of social media, this instinct only grows stronger. Platforms like Reddit, Facebook, and car forums are hungry for a villain's face, a name that turns an abstract loss into a personal betrayal. At GVE London, that face was George. Clients remembered the personal touch, the late-night assurances, the handshake over a six-figure deal. When things fell apart, screenshots of his messages, sometimes earnest, sometimes evasive, became evidence for an angry jury. He lied to me. He promised everything would be fine. He stopped replying when my money disappeared. But why is it so easy for a crowd to settle on a frontman, even when the real architects remain hidden? The answer is rooted in human psychology. The sales director is close enough to feel personal, but distant enough to carry the anger safely. Blaming the system or a faceless board doesn't satisfy the craving for justice. Naming a villain feels powerful, controllable, and, at least temporarily, restores order to a chaotic situation. Media knows this too. Headlines thrive on familiar names and dramatic arcs. Sales director at center of scandal will always draw more clicks than complex chain of systemic failures. Social algorithms amplify outrage, feeding the mob's focus and making it harder to look away or to question if the right person is even in the crosshairs. International scandals echo this pattern. At CNC Motors in the US, the sales manager became a meme, while the true financial decision-makers avoided the limelight. In Germany and Japan, charismatic frontmen bore the brunt of community rage while the executives quietly disappeared. Distraction isn't just a side effect, it's a strategy. The more the crowd looks at the frontman, the less they see the hands working the strings behind the curtain. The challenge is not to ignore wrongdoing at the front lines, but to ask who benefits when the crowd's gaze is fixed on one familiar name.
The tragedy of the fool guy is that sometimes the wrong person is left holding the blame. George may have made mistakes, often reassurances he couldn't keep, or stayed silent when he should have spoken up. But was he truly the architect of GVE London's collapse? Or was he caught in a crossfire, doomed the moment the system needed a scapegoat? Scapegoating satisfies a deep-seated need for resolution. Owners and the public want someone to pay, to apologize, to serve as a warning. But when the pressure lands on a visible but relatively powerless person, justice becomes confusion and the cycle of failure continues. The personal toll is heavy. Frontline staff like George often lose more than a job. They lose careers, reputations, even peace at home. Viral outrage spills into real life, threats on social media, loss of friendships, family anxiety. All the while, the true masterminds, those who set strategy, who made the biggest decisions and gains, remain untouched, protected by legal distance and careful planning. Legally, the line is also clear. Unless George can be proven to have knowingly lied, profited from deception, or participated in fraud, UK law rarely holds a sales director personally liable. The law recognizes the reality. Systemic failure can't always be pinned on the person who delivered the message. But in the world of public opinion, facts come second to emotion. The more George is blamed, the more those truly responsible are allowed to vanish without consequence. It's a cycle seen in scandal after scandal, from Enron's lower-level traders to Japan's supercar king showroom staff. When the front line is destroyed, the system remains untouched. So how can this pattern be broken? It starts with a harder question, not just who made the last promise, but who designed the game so someone else would always lose. Until that question is asked, more Georges will be left in the crossfire, innocent or not.
If George is not the true villain, why do scandals like GVE London keep happening? The uncomfortable answer is that the system is built to protect those in the shadows. Legal loopholes, complex corporate structures, and a culture of plausible deniability make it possible for the real masterminds to escape blame over and over again. Let's look at how this plays out. The CEO, directors, or major shareholders have the power to shape business models, approve risky practices, and direct the movement of assets. They're advised by lawyers who build in layers of protection, holding companies, indemnity clauses, offshore accounts. When red flags appear, these leaders don't stick around to face the crowd. They step back, call their lawyers, and let others take the heat. Sale or return agreements, so popular in the luxury car world, are a perfect example. They allow dealers to use clients' high-value assets to boost inventory and credibility without actually owning the cars. On paper, the risk is distributed. In practice, it's the clients and frontline staff who absorb the blow when things go wrong. Regulators, often under-resourced and slow to react, can't keep up with the sophistication of these schemes. Investigations drag on, accountability is diffuse. By the time administrators step in, the masterminds have moved on, sometimes to the next business, leaving only empty offices and broken promises behind. Even when scandals hit the news, the headlines focus on the most visible character. The system remains untouched, ready for the next cycle. Customers become cautious for a while, but with time, trust is rebuilt on new faces and fresh promises. Internationally, this pattern repeats. The infamous Wirecard scandal in Germany, dealer collapses in the US and Japan. Always a fall guy, always masterminds who walk away. The deeper question isn't just about one collapse, but about a system that encourages risk, punishes honesty, and rewards those who know how to disappear when the truth comes out. Until there is real change in how blame and responsibility are assigned, the game will always be rigged for those who play from the shadows.
So how do we stop being fooled? If every scandal gives us a new scapegoat and the true architects escape, what would it take for real change at GVE London and everywhere else? First, we must challenge our instincts as consumers and as a community. Resist the urge to focus only on the visible face. Ask harder questions. Who wrote the contracts? Who benefited most? Who had the power to change course but didn't? The real answers are almost never in the WhatsApp chat, but in the boardroom minutes, the legal filings, and the movement of assets behind the scenes. Second, demand more from our systems, legal, regulatory, and cultural. Stronger regulations are needed to close loopholes that let masterminds hide behind shell companies and layers of plausible deniability. Regulators must be empowered and resourced to move fast and trace responsibility beyond the front line. Sale or return and similar high-risk business models should require real transparency, mandatory escrow, and direct accountability for those at the top. Third, insist on true accountability in both the media and the courtroom. Journalists, influencers, and the public should look beyond easy headlines. Who is not answering questions? Who is never named? Media coverage must connect dots, not just chase the biggest target for clicks. Legal systems should evolve to pierce the corporate veil when necessary, so that directors and major beneficiaries can't simply move on and repeat the game elsewhere. Finally, we must support those who speak up, whether they are whistleblowers inside the business or customers pushing for answers. Real reform only happens when someone is willing to break the silence, no matter the personal risk. The collapse of GVE London is not just a story of one frontman or one group of angry customers. It is a warning. So long as we accept distraction and deflection, the real masterminds will keep escaping, and the next George will be left to pay the price. If this video made you question what you believe about blame and responsibility, like, share, and comment with your own experience. The only way to end this cycle is to see through the smoke and demand that the right people finally answer for what they've done.